Hey, you beautiful people out there, we have with us Mafalda Chantre, if I'm saying the name right.
Yes, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Hello.
I have so much to say about her that I'm going to be speechless if I give her introduction. So I will allow her to say those beautiful things about her because that is going to be namaste to her. She says a surrender to her own soul when she introduces herself. Namaste, Mafalda.
Namaste. Hmm.
Let's listen about you from you.
So, I'm Mafalda. Um, I am a transformation guide and a healer. I'm also an artist and a soul here on this earth to help assist the collective in this great shift that we know is happening, and just grateful and blessed to be an instrument to the soul, to the higher aspects of reality. So
Lovely.
thank you so much for having me here.
You're more than welcome. I think the post went out on threads, and some people just immediately replied in the next 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I had around 12 people reaching out to me for the podcast, and when I spoke to you, and I thought, because we both belong to the category of the twin flames, and Mahashivaratri, which is an auspicious day for universal twin flames because it's called as the union of the male and the female energies. I thought it was the best that we talked on that day. So let's begin with your twin flame journey, the breakdown, and because that is one space which is going to bring a lot of light for a lot of people out there.
I What an overwhelming journey it is, and although I have been through many awakenings in this life, this one has been certainly the most acute, which is perhaps surprising. But now that I'm on the journey, and those who are on it too will also resonate, that it is quite overwhelming, and it's a level of spiritual growth and being called to really address the egoic structure, to really take this spiritual journey seriously. And it's such a painful, challenging experience that we really feel pushed, and our soul just calls us deeper and deeper and deeper into this knowing of God, and this surrender to the path, and allowing the divine to guide us. But yes, it can be a very overwhelming experience, and I think we're seeing it more and more in the collective, precisely of because of the moment that we're living. And I think, although it is a very controversial topic, so I have shied away from speaking about it too much in public because of the magnitude of it and the differing opinions, and there's just so much talk and conversation around it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like you said, I think it will help people to know that this phenomenon is happening, and that it is a spiritual awakening. It's an acute spiritual awakening through this catalyst of this connection, of this bond. But that ultimately the purpose is, of course, to anchor unconditional love into this planet, and to help us grow spiritually. So I feel, at least, that's the bottom line. And with the people that have come to me through my work as well, and also in social circles, I feel like that's really the focus. There are, I think, some people that might feel like they're on a journey like this one, and they might not be. I think it's just important to know that this is just like anything. It's a soul's path. It's not something you go out and seek. It it finds you.
So there are a lot of misconceptions that are associated with this entire story about the twin flames. Uh, I've had my bit of experience. I've talked to a lot of people in this space. I've been having a lot of sessions with those spaces. People do have a bent towards understanding this journey as a romantic journey, which I don't think it is. I think somebody just comes, quashes you, triggers you, breaks you, bundles you, gets pieces out of you, throws them there, and then you realize this dagger is so deep because your bond with them was has been so deep because it's you, that to take out that dagger out of the place, the carved space is so much that the space can only be filled in by the divine. So, your relationship with the twin flame is pain. We were talking about you. I've read about you. How has pain transformed you? Tell me. What is the role of pain in your transformation? Is it what people genuinely say, or is it something different?
Well, that Rumi quote just came to me, where it's really, for me, that's really how I've experienced it, that it's been where the light has truly entered. And so I have seen pain and have experienced pain as the great catalyst for light, love, joy. And I know it sounds paradoxical, but when you've been through so much pain, and I've had that experience of coming in touch with some of the deepest pain of humanity, and how distorted, how off course we've gone as a collective.
Yeah.
And when you're put face to face with that level of pain, it's almost like, well, it just, you either, you come to a love that is beyond what you could have imagined, to feel love at the end of the bottomless, when you face that which you thought you would never be able to face, when you realize the only way out is through, and you actually realize that those places that you thought, those things you thought, those experiences you thought were going to kill you, and that actually made you come into love, into deeper love, into deeper joy. And that's something that's difficult to put into words. This is something that one must experience. One must be brave enough. And I've always seen my life, and I've always seen life as a hero's journey in that way.
Wow.
That one must be courageous enough to face death. And that's when you get to a point where you're actually entering the paradigm of love, where you become untouchable. But yes, it's the pain is the teacher. The pain, and it's just a messy teacher, but it's part of the human experience. It is harsh, but it can be a harsh place to learn.
So pain is messy, or healing is messier? Tell me.
Yes, healing is messy. Yes, I think is what perhaps people don't want to hear, but it's just not packaged. It's not neatly packaged at all. It is messy, but that's when you realize that that's where you find the wholeness, that it wasn't about perfecting yourself. It wasn't about fixing yourself. It was about loving all those pieces that you thought were broken. And that's when you can see the perfection in the imperfection. Not
Wow.
because you're denying the bits that you would rather were not there, the bits that feel guilty and ashamed and in so much pain and rejection and betrayal and just all the wounding that we carry. And when you embrace them, not from a place of victimhood, and this is for me the key, it was understanding that I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to be defined by victimhood, and I knew that that was possible. But I also knew that I couldn't just pretend my way out of it. I also knew that just telling myself that I wasn't one wasn't going to fill that massive void inside. And so it took rescuing the victim, myself, taking that responsibility for myself, saying, I'm going to rescue that girl. And
I'm going to stop you right there. That girl that went through so much of trauma in the childhood. I want you to talk about that girl and this girl today. What is does Mafalda today have anything to do with that girl that went through so much of trauma as a child? How do you relate with those two identities? Tell
Mm,
me.
it's so interesting. It becomes a very rich inner experience because it's like it's been a soul retrieval. So
Wow.
I've reintegrated those bits of myself. So I know those aspects of myself, and there's been a process also of it's actual healing, right? It's the love that heals, and so the wounded parts sort of lose their grip, and what remains is the child, the pure child that was there underneath it all. But of course there has to be, or there has been, a reconciliation with also the parts that are not so pretty, that rebelled, and that I'm not even proud of the way they would rebel, right? The parts that wanted to come and defend. And so it's about that retrieval, bringing all those bits, understanding that I get it, and developing a relationship with that. But you have to be willing to look. So let's say the part of me that would have reacted in a way that I would consider is not in alignment with truth, that would have reacted from a place of anger or bitterness, for example. Instead of letting that character play out unconsciously in my life, I've sat with that part of me. I've reconciled that part of me. I've accepted. And that's what's allowed it to not grow and run the show of my life, so that I'm not acting in resentment and anger. And that's the paradox. It's when you bring love, when you shed light, that's the thing. When you shed
Lovely.
light unto the
Lovely.
darkness,
Lovely.
you transform, you heal. And so you develop, what I have developed is a relationship with myself and with these different parts of myself, almost like a rebuilt mosaic that's whole, but it's not, it's all together, right? But the pieces are put back together, basically. And it's the beauty of that, and letting that shine, not in needing to be perfect or polished to the outside, but realizing that it wasn't about that in the end. It was about truth. It was
So did
about,
you forgive? Did you forgive?
yes, yes.
How old? How much time? How old the wounds were, which were healed in the process, and how much time did it take you to forgive and let go and say that today I stand and say goodbye to whatever it was?
Uh, I guess, over 20 years, I guess, in total, to
It
really
took you.
say that I forgive. But consciously, I would say, consciously, actively, it would have been about 5, 6 years, I would say. So it was a process, and I'm truly grateful for that process, because forgiveness isn't something that you can fake, because it's really something that comes, it really comes from inside, and you just feel it. And it also comes in waves, and it's not something that necessarily just one day it's done, although you do come to realize that it is done. um it does come in waves, but the gift of forgiveness is also the gift of allowing yourself to feel your way through the process, and to free yourself at the end, to
Wow.
free yourself from carrying that burden, and and realizing that only you can do that, because ultimately it's forgiveness of self, it's forgiveness of the other, and it's love and compassion. The peace, the reward is so much greater when you see love in another, even someone that has abused you, even someone that has harmed you. That level of freedom from our dual world here in terms of the attachment to the good and the bad, there is a level of transcendence and of the pain. But yes, again, I just want to reiterate that it comes genuinely when you allow yourself to feel the pain. So it happened naturally. At the beginning, I was a little bit more forcing myself into it. No, 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 I'm a compassionate person. I choose to forgive. I choose to forgive. But ultimately, there's just too much anger. So what I have felt is I needed to feel my way through the anger. I needed to do it, but not when you're lashing out necessarily. And that might also happen. I mean, it is messy, right? But I think the core of it was me taking responsibility for it, isolating myself, taking space and time, and feeling my way through it. And that process is not pretty, but it's necessary. And you do get through. When you're going through it, you think there's no end, but there is an end. You do come out the other side. Definitely.
Congratulations, you came out from the sides. There was light at the end of the tunnel, and today, speaking to you, so I don't know whom am I speaking to. Am I speaking to a healer? Am I speaking to somebody who's been looking at acting as a career? And I don't know what am I looking at somebody who's an economist? Am I looking at somebody who's had little interest in politics? Who am I speaking to today? So how do you wear all these masks and so is it your switchboard, or is it your one light which is putting into the bulb, into the AC, into the tube light, into the thing? So how do you do this?
Yes, I love this question because I think it really is the time for it. And I think we're seeing a big renaissance of polymaths and this expansion of knowing. And for me as a child, this has always just been my way of operating in the world. And I never felt like I belonged because of that. And people thought that was weird to have so many different passions and interests that are seemingly unrelated to each other. But I think the common thread, the through line, is that since I was a kid, to me, what mattered were the great questions. Who are we? Why are we here? Where are we headed? It seemed to me as a kid that we had very little answers for having been here on this planet for so long. And so I think that it might not make sense to the outside, but I was always searching for the same thing through different routes and different avenues. And this is what I've come to realize. All the roads, they lead back home. They lead back to consciousness within. And that's why at this point, to me, it all culminates in this merge, in this meeting point of science and spirituality. They're asking the same thing. And it also brings us back to this balancing that's happening on Earth, that it is all interconnected. And when you dive deep enough, you can see the interconnectedness in everything. And to me, that's the beauty of it. And I never let myself, I knew deep inside that the limitations were imposed, that the world was, that knowledge and wisdom and all these, and art and science and social sciences and mathematics and politics in the world, and just looking at how the world worked from all viewpoints and perspectives and prisms, I just knew that was possible, that it was not true that I had to pick one way, and that my abilities or capacity were limited. And to me, it just, even since I was a kid, since I knew that we were using very little of our brain. And so the second I knew that, which is something that has always fascinated me, the ability of humans to live outside of what they know. Because to me, it's like, once you know, how can you then go and act as though you don't know?
So hearing you, you stay so much inside. Doesn't the outside world seem like not interested at times?
Yes, and I do think that the spiritual path and the spiritual journey does call us into some solitude, and it's important, I think, on the one hand, because we have become so attached as a society, as a human collective, we're so attached to the physical reality, and I think it's important to take those times and that space to really look within so you can truly awaken. Because if you're also constantly interacting, it's easy to fall back out. We're not on the path, we're not on the path, the spiritual path in the monastery, or at least I'm not. And so I guess it's my way of recreating that, to be able to ground and sustain the expansion and the spiritual growth that I am experiencing, which at the end of the day, yes, of course, perhaps is not the same way of interacting socially in the world as others, but, or always at least. But I do feel like it is important to engage in the world, and I am passionate about going into the world. It's just been a process, and it's been phases of my life, and I do think there has been a call to go within and to take that time to contemplate, because we're so far into, we were so far into separation consciousness in as humans, that I think that to awaken, it's necessary.
Lovely. So, what do you have to say about boundaries? Come, because what if you step out and you are always in? And tell us something. How do you manage those boundaries?
Well, to me, boundaries are really the lesson of a lifetime. It's been one of those that has been a hard lesson that I've had to learn the hard way as a trauma survivor, and also now doing this work, and as somebody who's sensitive with access to spirit, other realms, and just psychic abilities in general, which obviously means you're quite sensitive energetically. So from both sides, it has been it has been a hard lesson. But what I can say is, to me, it's all comes down to self-love, because when you love yourself, you embody those boundaries. You start to listen to your body's cues. You start to know when an exchange is imbalanced, for example, when an environment is not conducive to your well-being and you need to step aside. But if you don't have that self-love, you don't take those actions for yourself. You tend to self-sacrifice. And of course, poor boundaries and self-sacrificing to this extent and people pleasing are common when you've been through trauma, and of course you've learned, or you've been trained to think that that's love. But what I've learned is that at the end of the day, you can show up in service to others so much better when you are well taken care of. And so it has been hard, and I've just had to do it over and over and over and over and over again, and get to a point where you're drained, and you have to learn the hard way. And the divine is like, do you see now why you need to rest? And it actually, I think, also ties back into your previous question, which is, I perhaps would want to be out all the time and be much more engaged in the world than I am. But I also realize that to do the work that I do, a certain level of boundaries in terms of my energy are required. So it's been a hard lesson, but it's just part of this human experience. We incarnate into form, and so we have this perceived separation, and so we need to navigate this 3D reality where there are other people, right? Where there are others, let's say. And so it's just part of it's part of the journey, but then it's priceless, because when you really start to build those boundaries, you see why they're so key. You see the effects, and you see how much better you feel, how much more you can invest in those connections and the situations and jobs and everything that actually nourish you, and how that actually nourishes and impacts the environment around you. Because sometimes that's the fear, that if we set those boundaries, we're actually going to disappoint people, or we're actually not going to be able to help others. But then it ends up being the opposite. You can actually help so much more when you do have those boundaries in place.
So, can I ask you a human question? The question is, the human question is, do you still dislike people? Do you still hate people? Do you still lie? Or is it, or is it just you beyond all this?
Well, not the lying. No, the lie, yeah. But I do find people's egos sometimes difficult to tolerate. But I do. But it's very different to disliking someone, I would say, or hating someone. It's just, you see when you're engaging with the person's conditioning and with their ego, as opposed to when you're engaging with their true self. So sometimes that does happen, where I'm like, oh, I'm friends with you, not with whatever is coming out of you right now.
So, you're a healer, and tell us something about an episode or a person whose healing journey impacted you a lot.
Mm. The story of someone, or
Something that touched you, something that uncovered something in you, something that triggered you. Because a healer getting triggered by somebody who's getting healed, which means there is a message coming from somebody he's healing. Because a healer doesn't get triggered very easily. These are things that I'm talking from my experience. So at times I feel that when I'm doing a session with somebody, for a healing session with somebody, and I'm in a constant engagement, at times I feel when somebody triggers me, it is also for me to learn a lesson. So have you had some experiences from somebody whom you were healing, you were counseling, you were in a session with, and say he or she said something in which you realized, oh, I still have to learn this?
Yeah. Okay. Now I understand the question. Yes. Yes, of course. And what I feel is that because you're at the observer level, when you're in that space, you can really see it. And it doesn't happen often but you just really see it as an opportunity. And I think for me, it's the responsibility to hold space for the other is so great that it just doesn't allow space for your ego to make it about you. And maybe in your life it would still, but I think in a session there's just too much respect for the work that's being done for my ego to start going off and making it about me. But it has happened where a client was sharing, especially around a situation that was triggering for me, and also not a very deep wound, which was surprising. And I was surprised. It's not like it touched a spot, because I think with the deeper wounds that I have had, there's just so much compassion and light at this point that it really doesn't trigger me. But maybe something that's a bit more ancillary. And I was surprised, and it was wow. I think to me that lesson in that specific moment really was about to truly not make it about me in that moment, to note it, and then ultimately later to take it as an opportunity to see, oh, okay, that showed me something about me that I still need to address. But I think at some point when you're on this journey long enough, you realize that it's an opportunity. It's always an opportunity. And you also have let go of the pressure of not having triggers, or of being perfect, or thinking that you have to be somehow larger than life to be able to heal or to be able to help others. So you sort of, it becomes lighter, that process of recognizing the trigger and seeing yourself. Don't you agree?
I agree with you absolutely because I think till the time we are on this planet Earth, there is always learning going to happen. There is always something new that's going to surprise, and I think that those little joys of being surprised is more to do about your state of mind in which you are not programmed with certain identities. You are not stuck onto certain identities, but you're open. You're open to go embrace new things, and you look at them as if a child looks at them with joy. A kite is flying, and then you look at the kite and you're like, oh my God, it's beautiful. So I think the joys of everyday life are something that I feel spiritual people feel more sensitively than others because we are open to the awareness of the beauty of it. That's how at times I look at it, of whatever things are in my experience. Couple of days we've been having a discussion. In fact, I put a thread out there talking about a lot of people out there have an idea about what is spirituality, and then the kind of mandates that they put forward about spirituality. Do you think a healer needs to be bothered about the fake spiritual thoughts that people go through? Is there anything that we can do about it? Or, do you think that's their first step towards light? Okay, even if they're faking spirituality, they're understanding or they're going on that path. What do you have to say about this?
Oh, this is such an interesting topic, and it's also been a big part of my journey. I think it's twofold. I think on the one hand, there is a level of spiritual disillusionment that one just has to go through on the journey. And I think all of us have come across either certain, uh, ideologies or even gurus or teachers or people that have disappointed us and that have portrayed themselves to be something that they were not. And I think that's part of the journey of learning discernment and spiritual maturity and coming back to our inner compass of who we choose to let guide us and not give our power away to even if it's not a person, right? If it's just a like a perspective or a trend, a certain concept, a spiritual concept. So I think on the one hand, that's part of it. On the other hand, I do think with spirituality becoming so mainstream, I do think certain spiritual truths have been sort of watered down. And I think that the message is somehow not necessarily getting to people. And I do think that at least from what I have seen, certain cases where that does create further fragmentation. And then what I have seen is people get stuck at a certain level, and then the spiritual ego starts to come in. And so I do think it is quite widespread. At the same time, I also feel like it's ultimately how else, people have to go through that phase, or whether or not you get stuck in it, or, it's not that I think I was ever faking spirituality, but of course there were moments, 10 years ago that I didn't understand certain things to the depth that I understand now. And maybe at the time I was seeing it more from a superficial perspective.
Yeah.
And now it's just the nature of the journey. You go deeper and deeper, and you also come back to the same things and you see them. But I do think there are some people that do get sort of lost, and it's sort of in this higher astral plane, in this fourth dimension, which is the most polarized one, where you've already had access to quite a lot of spiritual concepts, knowledge, higher knowledge, wisdom, whether it be, different religions or spiritual philosophies or ancient traditions or whatever it is, or even New Age. And so you know a lot, but you're not integrating. And I think that's where that fake spirituality comes from, because it becomes a bit performative. And so there isn't, and at the end of the day, the path really is about embodiment. It's about walking the talk. So knowing about these things is not enough. You must do the inner work to actually live from that place, to live from the heart. That's the spiritual path. And so I do think it's important to shed light because yes, I think there's a lot of just illusion, a lot of what appears to be something that it's not. But at the same time, I do want to just end this one point by saying that I do think we're at the time where authenticity is just at the highest, it's the highest currency. And I think we're becoming more and more aware, because we did go through a period of that fake spirituality being exposed. And I think now we're coming to a point where people really value authenticity. They're starting to feel that it's about that truth. It's not about the labels or the status or the outside. People want real transformation. People who are walking the talk. And so I think now we're going to start seeing more and more. It's going to become more obvious, let's say, the difference
Wow.
between what's real and what's not, if that makes sense. Like the veils are becoming thinner. Yeah.
So I'm very happy with this statement. I am going to be getting very wealthy, because one thing which everybody tells me, I am too very authentic and too original, at times annoyingly authentically original. So I'm looking forward for being wealthy. Should I give you whom should I give my bank account number to? If that is the currency that works. No, I so agree with you. Um, I don't get triggered very easily, but then, because we get triggered is why we have boundaries, because that is also disturbing the work that we've done inside. And it's not that we've complete ourselves 100, no, which means there can be erosion, because the moment the ego comes in, there is going to be erosion. There is going to be erosion, so we have to take care of that ego. And I think a lot of people who stay around with this um, thought process, because the hottest two selling words nowadays are sex and spirituality. I mean, I have no qualms in saying that sex and spirituality sell boom. So everybody's trying to sell both, whatever they can sell. So, but spirituality cannot be sold. It cannot be taught. It cannot be written. It can only be experienced in your awareness. And the moment it comes in your awareness, anybody in front of you will know this is a no mess up person. This is a no mess up person. So it's your perspective is very beautiful on this, and I think you must be the fourth person who I've asked this question to, and the answer has been very clear. And the best thing about your answer is that the way you look at it is it's not even judgmental. It's you giving chances to both of them. You're giving them a chance to improve, which giving them a chance to walk that path and figure it out for themselves.
Yes,
Figure it
absolutely.
out for themselves. So I don't want to take more of your time. I want to get you to that point wherein uh, that one moment when you knew, I am awake. I am awake. And did it happen on a day, or it just somebody told you you've changed?
Mm.
Somebody from the past you met, he says, and that is when you realized, oh, have I? Or people, when is it that people started noticing and they started telling you, oh, this is not the same girl?
Actually, it's funny because for me, it was so much, it was more about realizing, it was the day I realized I'm not crazy. It was more that. It was that what I saw, I was really seeing.
I don't think we need to say anything else. So I think those experiences are something that I feel that are we should keep them closed, because only when you experience that is when you experience that. One message for everybody who's listening to you, everybody who's a path of healing, anybody who's the path of spirituality, anybody who's on the path of this oneness, everybody who's fighting this duality, this twin flame journey. One good message for all of them, and a real tough truth.
Well, I will keep it simple because I think at the end of the day, it's about the truth of the heart, and it's not about me or my words or sounding clever or having anything to add. So for me, at the end of the day, it is that love is what heals. it is love that heals. And the truth will always set us free. And I firmly, firmly believe that.
Love is love. Beautiful.
Love is
Thank you.
love.
Love is love. Only those who really have experienced love, I think, are the real liberated souls. The rest are just wanting to snatch, wanting to bite, wanting to steal, wanting to find, wanting to hide, wanting to do this. But once you've experienced that infinite, unconditional love, once you've been in that light, and once you've experienced the final, real truth, there is no going back. Then you're awake. And then
No,
you
there
can't go
is.
back to sleep because the sun is looking into your eyes.
The
Beautiful.
whole point is love. I do remember that day. The realization is about, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I had a moment when, it just hits you, and you realize that it's the whole point is remembering love.
Lovely. Thank you so much. The
Thank
beautiful
you.
soul. Thank you
Thank you
so much
so
for
much for having me.
sharing your thoughts. I think it's what you're feeling, what you're saying is coming out so much from the innermost wisdom and from places where it's going to resonate with so many out there. And I hope your words, your love, your passion, your compassion heals a lot of people out there.
Mm.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste. That's my hope too. Thank you.